Have you ever had this inkling thought in the back of your mind? I need to write a book. Now, some of us may have that all the time. Others of us may be thinking, you know what, that's for somebody else. I'm not at this level where I'm prepared to write a book. A book may be in the future, but right now it may not be the right move. Welcome to the Magnetic Marketing Podcast, where we get to listen today to Adam Witty, and he's going to be talking to us about book publishing and the 10 reasons you should be an author, not sometime in the future, but today. Now, I've heard Russell Brunson talk to multiple people on stage about the reason he created his first book, .com Secrets. And a book, when you do it right, plants a flag. It becomes the foundation for the business. It becomes the education. And that education in the right hands changes niches. It crafts categories, and it moves the unmovable. This is the 10 reasons why you should be writing a book by Adam Witty.
I don't think there's anybody that has had a bigger impact in the field of direct response than Dan Kennedy.
The legend of Dan Kennedy should be ignored at your own peril.
They're not really lessons, they're kind of laws that you live by.
Dan opened my eyes to what small business marketing looks like.
Dan teaches strategic direct response that is timeless.
His ripple effect touches people who don't even know his name.
The world as we know it was changed because Dan Kennedy became obsessed with marketing.
Welcome to the Magnetic Marketing Podcast with your host, Dan Kennedy.
All right, so obviously, as you can see, I'm tall, light, and handsome. Oh, wait a minute, I'm not Gene Simmons. But I am here to talk about book publishing, printing ink on dead wood, a very fascinating topic. And I want to get a show of hands. How many in here have written a book? Okay, so a good bit of you. Well, you guys can leave. No, I'm just kidding. How many in here have dreamed of publishing a book? Okay, it's a lot more of you. How many in here know you got a book buried deep inside of you, but you're scared to death to get it out? Yeah, me too. So in the 70 minutes that we have today, I'm going to talk about how to get your book done fast, published professionally, promoted effectively for ultimate credibility power and celebrity power. Now, does that sound good to everybody? Yes. Come on. Does that sound good to everybody? All right. Well, you know, the first question that I always get is, Adam, who can write a book? And who can write a book? What qualifications do you need to write a book? Well, let me share with you some of the people that have written books with me. Let's see. Chef, doctor, consultant to car dealers, inventor, stockbroker, athletic director, mortgage broker, magician, undertaker. Is Peak Performers member Scott Mueller here? Scott, will you stand up for a minute? Now, Scott Mueller is probably the only undertaker in the room. I have nicknamed him Dr. Death. And the point is simple. If an undertaker can write a book, you can definitely write a book. And the only thing worse than an undertaker is a lawyer. And let me tell you what, if a lawyer can write a book, there's hope for anybody. I mean, let's be honest. So the question is, if it's so easy to write a book, and if anybody can write a book, from an undertaker to a lawyer, why aren't more people writing books? Why are people petrified to write books? Who in here is petrified to write a book because they don't enjoy writing? Okay. Who in here is petrified to write a book because they're not a good writer? Okay. And now the big one, between us, the big enchilada. Who in here is petrified to write a book because, you know what? You don't have the time. You don't have the time to write a book. Well, let me tell you why every single person should write a book. And you see, after this presentation, I think it'll be your belief, too, that every single person in this room should be writing a book. And I'm going to show you to do it quickly and easily, faster than you ever imagined. It's not because you're going to get rich off of it, but you can get rich because of it. So a lot of people say, Adam, somebody that's tall, handsome, good-looking like you, how do you get to the book business? Seems like a pretty stale industry, doesn't it? Well, the truth is that, no kid ever grows up wanting to be a book publisher. I mean, am I right? Am I right? Okay. Doctor, fine. Astronaut, really nice. Professional athlete, great. Book publisher, nah, I don't think so. So how did I get into the book business? Well, the truth is, throughout my entire high school and college years, I spent summers working for a publishing house based in Orlando, Florida, where I grew up. And through those many summers that I spent there, I had an opportunity to see and do many, many things. I spent time in the editorial department seeing how a book is actually developed and edited. I spent time in the production department seeing a book being built. I spent time in the sales and marketing department seeing how a book is positioned and packaged and sold to bookstores and retailers and corporations and consumers. I even spent time in the warehouse seeing books picked, packed, and shipped. They realized that I was no good there, and they quickly kicked me out of the warehouse. I was not smart enough to be with them. So after all that time, what I realized is that I really love books. And I'll tell you, the real reason why I'm in this business is one thing. I believe deep down in the bottom of my heart that a book is the most powerful educational tool in the world. You can change your life. Your success is based on two things: the people that you associate with and the books that you read. Plain and simple. I'm very proud to be associated with 50% of that. And I believe that the right book in the right person's hand can save a marriage, can get somebody out of debt, it can bring somebody to sobriety, it can give a little girl enough self-confidence to believe that she can go out into the world and do whatever she wants. Doesn't matter. Books change lives. And you, as the authors, are the catalyst for that. So, in keeping with one of the world's greatest philosophers, David Letterman, I bring you my own top 10 list. So, from the home box office in Charleston, South Carolina, I bring you the top 10 reasons for being an author. So let's start number 10. A book builds credibility, fame, and prestige. Quite frankly, there's nothing that will put someone on a pedestal higher than a book. This is going to surprise a lot of you. I'm not very athletically inclined. I know you're surprised. In fact, my hand-eye coordination is not very good. Right now, I'm playing golf and I'm taking golf lessons, and the instructor encourages me to keep my head down. I'm convinced that so I can't see him laughing. So the one sport that I have taken up is running. It's a pretty easy sport. 1 foot, next foot, next foot, next foot. You're just putting one foot in front of another. So I'm a runner. I've run 5Ks, 10Ks, 15Ks, half marathons, full marathons. In fact, the last marathon that I ran, by the time I had crossed the finish line, the Kenyans had crossed, collected their prize money, showered, eaten, and were already on the plane back home. But here's the point. Writing a book is like running a marathon. Most human beings cannot conceive the idea of running 26.2 miles at once. Most human beings cannot conceive the idea of writing 100 pages, 200 pages, 300 pages at once. It puts you on a very high pedestal. I'll ask you this. If you weren't an expert, how could you possibly write a book? Who in here has ever heard of Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? How many of you have ever heard of Tim Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Workweek? Well, here's something big that both of them had in common. They were both authors first. Authors are what built their celebrity profile, their fame, their prestige. It was the book, the power of the pen, so they say. So now this is going to be the interactive part. After each slide, I'm going to say, if they can do it, and I want you guys to say in unison, so can I. So, we're going to give this a try. So if Robert Kiyosaki and Tim Ferriss can do it, so can I. All right. So number 9, networking tool. How many people in here would love to use their book to connect themselves with associations, organizations, people, or what I like to call spheres of influence? Anybody want to do that? Well, let me tell you this story. Brian Crabtree, Advantage client, he's the co-author of a book titled The Advantage of Real Estate. Brian is a real estate investor. And in the book, he was connected and networked with 11 other prominent real estate investors throughout the country. As a result of this book, the book getting in the hands of the right person, Brian undertook a real estate deal with a gentleman that he had connected with through the book. Last fall, they closed on a 400-unit multifamily apartment complex. They have a 3-year plan to renovate and flip the complex. That one deal alone will net Brian a very healthy 7 figures. One deal, 7 figures because of the book. Now that brings me to a great point. His name's Crabtree. I mean, what a silly name. Crabtree, crabgrass, crabapple. I mean, if Brian Crabtree can write a book. Oh, but you were supposed to laugh, by the way. Good. Thank you. If Brian Crabtree can write a book. All right. So number 8, your book is the ultimate business card. When you sit down to meet with a prospect, what's the first thing that you do? Most people slip a business card across the table, right? Well, that's what everybody does. And so you've got to be different. So what happens if instead of slipping that business card across the table, you just slip a copy of your book across the table? And you said, Mr. Prospect, I can't thank you enough for spending a few minutes with me. As a small token of my appreciation, I was hoping you might enjoy a complimentary copy of my book. Well, your prospect's going to straighten up in his chair. He's going to be blindsided. He wasn't expecting you to be an author and to have a book. And see, there's going to be a huge mind shift that immediately takes place. You're going to go from a prospect, a salesperson making another cold call. You're going to go from a unwanted pest to a welcome guest. Dan Kennedy talks about it all the time. In fact, Dan's spoken many times about how your level of credibility instantly rises when you pass that book across the table. Now, instead of you selling something, they're thinking to themselves, how can I get this guy to take me on as a client? Big, big difference. Let me tell you about one of our authors, a gentleman by the name of Terry Weaver. Any of you ever hear of Hilton Head Island? Well, I'm from Charleston. We don't really go to Hilton Head. That's where all the Yankees go. But Terry, you're supposed to laugh at that too, by the way. Obviously, I don't have a career in humor and show business, so you've pointed that out very clearly. For 13 years, Terry was the #1 selling real estate agent for the Sea Pines Company on Hilton Head Island. What Terry realized is he did not want to be in the real estate sales business anymore. He wanted to be a real estate sales trainer. So what did he do? He wrote a book. So now every single time that Terry will sit down to meet with a prospect, and his clients are Walt Disney World Resorts and Walt Disney World Vacations, Syntex Homes, Ginn Properties, all of the companies that develop the really high-end, what he calls amenity communities with the golf and the fishing and the big clubhouses and all that, he trains their entire sales staff. And so one client for him is easily worth 5 figures. Now, if you ask Terry, you've got a 200-page book. What's the most important page in that book? What do you think he's going to say? Page 200. Business card. All of his contact information. In fact, he doesn't care if you don't read the rest of the book. It's a business card. And as soon as he slides it across the table, the credibility cranks up a notch. So, if Terry Weaver can do it, all right. Number 7, build brand recognition and equity for your company. How many of you have ever heard of Starbucks? One person has heard of Starbucks? Are you kidding me? How many of you have a cup of Starbucks in your hand right now? So, I've always been a big believer in listening to Mama. And Mama always said, Adam, coffee stunts your growth. So seriously, I stay away from it like the plague. I don't drink coffee. I have heard of Starbucks. Howard Schultz is the chairman and CEO of Starbucks. About 8 years ago, he wrote a book. It's titled Pour Your Heart Into It. How Starbucks Built a Company, One Cup at a Time. Now, I don't drink coffee, but I'm an entrepreneur, and I thought I could learn something about building a business. So I read the book. You know, after reading the book, I was truly so moved by their corporate culture, the way that they treat their employees, the way that they interact with their suppliers and vendors. I became a Starbucks customer. Every single week, I go to Starbucks. Don't drink coffee. Drink the tea or the drinks that are like milkshakes, but they're not milkshakes. But I go to Starbucks every single week. An unintended consequence for Mr. Howard Schultz. I am now a loyal Starbucks customer. I want to tell you a story about John Wood. This is a fascinating story. John is the founder of an organization called Room to Read. In 1999, John was a senior marketing executive for Microsoft Corporation. John was in charge of all of Microsoft's corporate marketing in China and the entire Pacific Rim. John was getting burned out, so he decides to take a 2-week trip hiking through the Himalayan mountains. On his trip, he meets an education resource officer in Nepal. They hit it off, and the education resource officer begs him to come tour a schoolhouse. So he obliges. They go to the schoolhouse, and it's 2 rooms. It's the actual schoolhouse, and then there's an adjoining library. There's 30 or 40 kids in the school. And he walks into the library, and he's shocked. You want to know why he's shocked? There aren't any books. None. In fact, it's a completely bare room. And there's one little cupboard in the back corner. And it's locked. So the resource officer at the top of his lungs screams for the librarian to come into the room. She comes in with a little key, and she runs to the back of the room and unlocks the case. And I kid you not, there's 3 books in the case. One is Dr. Seuss, one is a Danielle Steele romance novel, and the other one is called Sightseeing in Mongolia. The reason why they kept these books locked up is because they didn't want the kids to damage them. And he realized that there was a huge need for educational resources in these third world countries. As he was leaving the schoolhouse, the teacher said, "Thank you for visiting us, sir. Perhaps next time, should you come back, you will bring books." Perhaps, should you come back, you will bring books. Well, that phrase would go on to change John's life. In fact, I would argue that it would go on to change the world forever. He got back to Shanghai, where he was with Microsoft, and the daily grind kept getting to him and getting to him and getting to him. And on a whim, he decides to leave Microsoft. No job, no idea what the heck he's going to do. He goes out and he starts a nonprofit called Room to Read. They started in 2001. As of me speaking right now, they have built over 5,600 libraries and schoolhouses in developing third world countries. I think that's pretty exciting. Do you think that's pretty exciting? A friend of mine had given me a copy of the book. He thought I would enjoy it. I read the book. Now, I'm a big believer in books, as you know. I was so moved by the book that I wrote him a check. Here's a guy that John had never met, probably never would meet, and I'm writing him a check. Well, as a result of this book, Room to Read in John Wood has had thousands of new volunteers and new financial contributors that are donating to their organization. A book builds brand recognition and brand equity for your organization. If Howard Schultz can do it, and John Wood can do it, all right. So number 6, use your book to acquire clients and to become a customer magnet. All right, we're going to talk about a car dealer. And again, if a car dealer can do it, looks pretty good for you guys. Carl Sewell wrote a book in 1990 titled Customers for Life. In the book, Carl outlines his 10 commandments of customer service. Every single person that would come into a Sewell auto dealership would instantly receive a complimentary copy of the book. Now, let me ask you a question. They give a copy of the book to the prospect, they go home, they read the book, or they skim through the book. The entire book is about the unbelievable customer service that they provide. How many people do you think read that book and became clients of the Sewell automobile dealerships? A lot of them. He didn't care if he didn't sell a single copy. Now let me ask you this. How many of you would like a book that you could give to your customers and all of your best prospects that would instantly point them back to doing business with you? How many people would like that? Well, the proof's in the pudding. Carl Sewell in 1990 writes this book. At the time, he's got 3 dealerships. Today, he's got 16 dealerships in Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Grapevine, and Plano. It works, folks. So, if Carl Sewell can do it, all right, number 5. This is a big one. Use your book to become a darling of the media. Who in here gets media? Parole violations do not count. Maybe I should restate the question. Okay. Who in here would like to get more media? Who in here would like to be on the news more often? Let me tell you about one of our clients, a gentleman named Jim Ziegler out of Atlanta, Georgia. Jim is a consultant to car dealers. And, Jim has used his status as an author in the car business to really build a name for himself. In fact, just recently, he was the keynote speaker at the NADA conference, the National Automotive Dealers Association. There were 8,000 attendees. So I want you to picture 8,000 car dealers in one room, and you're giving them unlimited liquor to drink? This is like Christmas Day for a polyester salesman. Kid you not. So Jim writes this book, The Prosperity Equation. And the first thing that he does is he sends this book out to all of the media within his industry. He sends a copy of the book to Dealer Magazine. Dealer Magazine is the largest trade journal in the automotive industry. Now, Jim is a consultant to car dealers. So who do you think his prospects are? Car dealers, right? Okay. So Dealer Magazine gets a hold of the book. They invite him to write an article. That article turns into a monthly column. Here's a picture of his column, and, column probably isn't the right word, because this one is 4 pages. This is the March 2008 issue. You'll see, I don't think you can see here, but Jim Ziegler is the president of Ziegler Super Systems, Inc., and here's all of his contact information. Do you think it would be easier for Jim to do business with car dealers if he is the authority writing a column in every single issue of his trade journal? Do you think that's easier for him to get clients? Let me ask you this. Would it be easier for you to get clients if you were writing a column every single month in your largest trade journal? Would it? So Jim's been writing this article, this monthly column, since October of 1998. 10 years. Jim is a character, to say the least. In fact, I was talking to him just last week, and Jim has this theory, and that is, I don't fly in the back of no planes, is what he says. And so just recently, the president of Ford Motor Company had hired Jim to come up and spend a half day with them because they're realigning their dealer model. And because Jim works with car dealers, he's very much an expert in that area. Well, I think everybody in here knows that Ford's kind of going through some tough times. And so I just said jokingly, Jim, they throw you in coach? Just to get a rise out of him. And he said no. They sent one of their corporate jets down to Atlanta to pick me up, spend a day in Detroit, and take me back home. So how many of you guys would like to do consulting with the biggest company in your industry and have them sending a corporate jet to pick you up? I mean, seriously. Now, most of you probably don't know Jim Ziegler. In fact, I would be surprised if any of you knew him coming into today. Jim has this theory. Outside of the car business, nobody knows who he is. But inside of the car business, he's a friggin' rock star. And he is. How many of you would like to be a rock star in your industry? How many of you think having a book and having a monthly column in your largest trade journal will do that? Well, we talked about car dealers. I guess we got to talk about lawyers. John Patrick Dolan, Advantage client and author of Negotiate Like the Pros. In fact, after you read John's book, you can sit across the table from George Ross and negotiate with him. He's a criminal defense attorney in, where else? California. I figure that if you're in that business, you probably want to be in California because that's where most of the action is going on. So Jim is a criminal defense attorney and he's an author. And Jim has used his status as an author to literally become a darling of the media. Jim is a regular analyst on Fox News, on CNN, on CNBC, MSNBC, and Court TV. Before he was an author, before he was a darling of the media, like most attorneys, he was fighting for business. Now, as an expert with his face on CNN, NBC, Fox News, Court TV, all the time, the best cases, the biggest cases, the most lucrative cases, literally fall in his lap. It all started with the book. So, if a consultant to car dealers and a lawyer can do it, all right. So number 4, multiplicity. Does anybody know what multiplicity is? Multiplicity is this principle of being in many places at one time. How many of you ever wish that maybe just for one small moment you had a clone? I definitely know I do. So, like 1996, they make this movie with Andy McDowell and Michael Keaton. I think it bombed at the box office, which means that I went to see it. And the plot is very simple. The character that Michael Keaton plays is overworked, underpaid, too much to do, and not enough time to do it. And so he clones himself. And at first, it's great. He gets everything done with less time. He's playing golf, he's going to the beach, and then havoc ensues. And it becomes an absolute disaster. Well, I'm not going to advocate that we start cloning people. For your sake, you don't want a bunch of Adam Wittys running around. But what I would say is we can clone ourselves in a very, very simple way. We can become authors. As an author, your book is everywhere. Jim Ziegler told you. His book is on the bookcases of the president of Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, Nissan, Toyota. His face, his ugly face, is in all of those corporate offices. Your book, your face, your name can be in offices, in the hands of Fortune 500 CEOs, corporate executives, whatever your market is, on their coffee tables for that matter. The easiest way to multiply yourself, to be more places, to do more things in less time without having to travel, is to have a book and to be an author. Reason number 3, build your list and lead acquisition. How many people in here have a really big list? All right, how many people have a big list? Seriously. How many people would like to have a really big list? So I want to tell you a story about my friend and mentor and one of my clients, Tom Antion. Tom Antion is a professional speaker and probably the leading authority on internet marketing. The first time that I ever met Tom looked at me and said, "Adam, what is a computer?" And I'm like, Cottonmouth was, taking set. I have no idea. He's like, "Adam, your computer is an ATM. With a list, you have the ability to print money any single time you want." Now, you might be thinking, "Adam, this has nothing to do with the book." Well, I'll correct you. It has everything to do with the book. Tom Antion has used his books to drive people to his list. Tom Antion has over 110,000 subscribers to his list. He routinely pulls in between $90,000 and $220,000 every single month, simply by mailing to his list. In fact, I was up at Tom's house last summer in Virginia Beach, Virginia. He and I were doing a recording for a product, and we went out to dinner. And when we came back, there was $7,700 in new orders that had come in the 2-hour span that we went to dinner and we were back. And as Tom says, thank God I can finally eat. And for any of you guys that know Tom, that's a good thing. Now, here's somebody else that does a really good job at this. Perhaps you've heard of him. Dan Kennedy. I mean, Dan is like overt about this. Like, you open up his book, and he's got free sign-ups to his list, like peppered throughout the entire book. This is no BS business success. Let's see here. If you'd like a lengthy free report reprinted from my No BS marketing letter about the 12 ways employees sabotage your marketing and what you can do about it, go to www.nobsbooks.com/free. For now, know that whatever you aren't watching over you like a hawk, you aren't getting. So what's he doing? He's using his book to get people to what? Sign up for his list. So, if Dan Kennedy and Tom Antion can do it, all right. Number 2, become a speaker. How many people in here are speakers? Okay. How many people in here would like to get into the speaking business? Part of their business. Okay. I have a great belief that every single person that is a speaker should also be an author. And every single person that is an author should also be a speaker. When you speak, you use your book to build your credibility to increase your speaking fees. As an author, you speak to promote your book. Let me tell you about one of our clients, a gentleman by the name of Greg Kazera, based out of Elkview, West Virginia. Greg wrote a book we released at the beginning of last year titled Learn Leadership. For the last 15 years, Greg has been a leadership speaker, consultant, facilitator, and trainer. Now, by his own admission, he was kind of on the B level of the circuit. His fee was, give or take, $2,500. He would do a half day of training. He may do a half day of facilitating, or he'd usually do a breakout session. Very, very rarely was Greg a keynote. He publishes this book with us in January of 2007. I spoke to him in February, and he said, Adam, you'll never believe the difference in my business by being a published author. In 2007, as a result of the book, he effectively doubled his speaking fee from $2,500 to $5,000 per event. He also started speaking from the main platform. No more breakouts and workshops for Mr. Greg Kazera. Now, folks, I'm not a math major. Obviously, as you can see by this bright, shiny face, I have other traits. I'm not a math major, but I can do the math pretty simple. $5,000, and he got 35 new engagements last year because of the book. It's $175,000 in additional income just from being a published author. Anybody that does speak knows another thing. Meeting planners control a big part of the industry. In fact, there's a lot of meeting planners that have a rule. If you're not an author, if you don't have a book, they won't even consider you. Greg has now endeared himself to meeting planners by being an author. If Greg Kazera from Elkview, West Virginia can do it. All right. And the drum roll. Drum roll, please. Okay, stop. So this is like the biggest one. In fact, I would argue that this is bigger than the other 9 combined. This one thing, the top reason for being an author, is the difference maker in creating a millionaire author. And I will tell you that most folks never get it. So drum roll, please. Number 1, product development. Now, Glaze or Kennedy folks, I will admit, seem to get this pretty well. At least I hope you do. In fact, if you attend their info summits, you guys probably really understand this. This is the principle of taking a book and turning it into dozens of ancillary products. You see, I have this belief, and that is that a book is not a book. A book is a foundation in which you can build an entire business. Let me give you an example. Tom Antion. Tom writes a book 10 years ago titled Wake 'em Up Business Presentations. The book is 200 pages, 20 chapters, and each chapter is a different element on how to have a great presentation. For example, one of the chapters is on humor, which, as is evident, I didn't read. Now, there is good news. Would you like to know the good news? You want to hear the good news? Yeah. All right. One of the chapters is on driving people to the back of the room. I happen to read that chapter very carefully. And I will demonstrate that in just a little while. So anyways, he writes this 20-chapter book, sells it for $20. Okay, so let's do the math. $1 a chapter, right? Pretty low retail price for his information. So what does he do? He doesn't stop with that. He creates an ancillary product from it. It's called Make 'em Laugh. This is a home study kit. It is the chapter on using humor in your presentations. He added more content to it. It was like a 100-page 3-ring binder. And he included 3 hours of audio with it. 3 hours of audio on what jokes to use, how to incorporate humor subtly into your presentations. So he takes one chapter out of the $20 book, and he sells it for $89. So he took 1/20th of the book, and he's selling it for 4 times the price of the entire book. Well, for those of you that know Tom, he would not dare stop there. So then he pluses it. This is his Wake 'em Up home study speaker system. This he sells for about $1,200. It includes his book. It includes like 12 hours of audio, 6 hours of video. But here's the thing. It's the book. It's that $20 book that he just expanded on. In fact, half of the audio in there is him reading the book. And see, you guys laugh, but don't laugh. Because there's different forms of learners. You've got audio learners, you've got visual learners, you've got kinesthetic learners. And if you're not developing product to hit each one of those markets, then you're leaving a lot of money on the table. A lot of money on the table. So Tom Antion sells this speaker system for $1,200. This one product alone has netted him more than $1 million. Now, he sells it for $1,200. His cost of goods, any guesses? 100. Good guess. 38. $38. Sell it for $1,200. I don't know about you, but those economics are a whole lot better than selling a $20 book. You know what I mean? A book is not a book. A book is a foundation to build a business. That one principle alone can make you millions if you apply it.
Thank you for listening to the Magnetic Marketing Podcast with Dan Kennedy. If you love hearing in on these lost Dan Kennedy talks and speeches and calls, then please let someone else know about this podcast. That's how you can help it to grow. And the more it grows, the more free Dan Kennedy we can bring to you. Also, Dan would love to give you the most incredible free gift ever, designed to help you make maximum money in minimum time. Now, this free gift comes with almost $20,000 in pure money-making information for free just for saying maybe. You can get this gift from Dan right now at nobsletter.com. Not only will you get the $20,000 gift, you're also going to get a subscription to 2 marketing newsletters that will be hand-delivered by the mailman to your mailbox each and every month. One from Dan Kennedy and one from me, Russell Brunson. To get this gift and your subscription, go to nobsletter.com right now.